Welcome to today's Explainer. We've all heard those amazing stories of incredible resilience, right? The triumphant tale of the kid from a deeply broken home who just somehow rises to the top of their class, gets perfect grades, and secures a ticket to a better life. Society absolutely loves to romanticize this. We point to them as living proof that pressure creates diamonds, that hardship automatically breeds excellence. But today, we're going to look at the actual data and the developmental psychology to set out on a very different path. We are going to deconstruct that myth entirely with a deeply empathetic and frankly serious look at what's really happening behind those perfect report cards. Okay, let's dive into this because here is the fundamental question we have to answer. How is it that when a home environment is marked by chaos, emotional neglect, or conflict, a child doesn't just give up, but instead becomes hyper-motivated? It looks like a miracle to an outside observer. But as you'll see, this counterintuitive phenomenon isn't a miracle at all. It's a fascinating, deeply complex psychological mystery, and we're going to unravel it together today. To really understand this, we have to immediately ground our analysis in developmental psychology. What we're looking at here is not your normal healthy trajectory of human growth. Not at all. It's what's called an adaptation strategy. When a child is placed in a severely limited or adverse condition, their brain essentially kicks into survival mode. They are literally just looking for the most feasible path to make it through the day. So that fierce motivation to study, it isn't born from some natural, joyous curiosity about the world. No, it's a desperate, highly effective coping mechanism. I want you to really let this quote sink in for a second. Not the environment cultivating a scholar, but the child saving themselves. If you've lived this, if you've actually been that child, I want to validate that experience for you right now. The hardship didn't make you brilliant. You made yourself brilliant to survive the hardship. We have got to shift our entire cultural narrative away from this toxic idea of cultivation through suffering and recognize it for what it truly is, a profound act of self-rescue. Let's move to Section 1, the core engine, and see how this builds into the 4 paths to control. We're going to do a sort of psychological autopsy on the specific mechanisms these children use to survive, really looking under the hood at what drives them. And this brilliantly illustrates how, when a home is chaotic, a child's psyche desperately searches for structure. 4 distinct survival personas emerge to help them gain a sense of control over their world: goal substitution, compensatory value, escape-driven, and early role assumption. Let's break these down one by one. Path 1 is goal substitution. Imagine being, say, 8 or 10 years old. Your parents' moods are totally unpredictable. Arguments just spark out of nowhere, or maybe there's just this cold, terrifying apathy in your home. You're completely powerless. But then you go to school. And school offers something incredibly beautiful to a brain in chaos: perfectly clear rules. Think about it. If I study this chapter, I get a good score. If I put in the effort, the reward is explicit, like a ranking or a prize. It's a closed system of logic. And the best part? The child can do it entirely independently of their family. The utter predictability of a grading rubric basically becomes their only psychological safe zone. I can't control my home, but I can control my grades. It's a heartbreaking logic, isn't it? They take a basic, everyday academic task and completely transform it into a vital lifeline. Every A+ isn't just a grade for them. It's literally a brick in a fortress they're building to protect their own sanity and autonomy. That brings us to the second path, compensatory value. In homes where there's a severe lack of affection, where a child feels ignored, constantly criticized, or just endlessly compared to others, they internalize this devastating belief: I am fundamentally not good enough unless I'm excellent. So what do? They look for a way to buy their worth. The equation in their head becomes: if I score well, I am valuable. If I fail, I am unlovable. They aren't just taking tests, you guys. They are taking the stand every single day, trying to prove their right to exist and be loved. Now, the final 2 paths force a child to adopt an incredibly heavy, adult-like perspective on their own life way before they're ready. The first is escape-driven, and it's exactly what it sounds like. It's the stark, cold realization that no one is coming to save them, and education is the single, realistic exit door from their current destiny. This motivation is born from sheer survival pressure, not some academic interest. Then there's early role assumption, which happens when a child has to become the functional adult in the house. Maybe they're managing their own schedule because no one else will, or even worse, managing their parents' emotions. The result? Premature, ironclad discipline and a terrifying sensitivity to outcomes. Moving on to Section 2, the crucial external pivot, or finding a temporary family. Now we have to introduce a vital caveat to this narrative,
because the data shows they rarely survive this journey entirely in isolation.
I really want you to visualize these external support systems as a temporary family. It might be an understanding teacher who actually saw them, as a whole person, not just their grades. It might be a peer group that highly valued learning, or a rare opportunity like a scholarship program that suddenly revealed a much larger world. These external factors function to provide the crucial emotional scaffolding, the recognition, the direction, the emotional buffer that the real family completely failed to provide. Honestly, it's the only way that engine of sheer willpower doesn't just completely overheat.
Which brings us to Section 3, the reversal, the hidden psychological costs. We validated their brilliant adaptation, but survival has a price. We really need to slow down and examine the incredibly heavy toll it takes once the immediate danger has passed.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the sharp, almost jarring contrast between the exterior and the interior realities. On the outside, you have society's ideal citizen, right? Highly disciplined, exceptionally resilient, laser-focused on clear long-term goals. But internally, that discipline is powered by immense, crushing pressure. They are paralyzed by a deep fear of ever stopping. And because all their energy went into execution and survival, their ability to process complex emotions severely lags behind.
So, what is the price of survival? Well, these are the specific long-term consequences. Because they're driven by pressure, not passion, you often see brilliant students suddenly burn out the moment they achieve freedom, like entering college. In fact, studies show that first-generation college students often face this exact invisible wall their sophomore year. When the oppressive environment that fueled their escape drive is removed, the engine just seizes up. They literally don't know why they're working anymore. Plus, there's a complete inability to truly rest or relax. Relaxation feels like a threat to a brain wired for survival. They're highly capable in execution, sure, but severely lacking in emotional processing because their core self-worth remains dangerously tied to perfect results and an intense fear of failure.
Not trying equals unsafe and unworthy. This is the tragic, deeply ingrained internal logic that constantly whispers in the ears of these high achievers. Even when they have the high-paying job, the degrees on the wall, the stable home they built for themselves, that whisper is still there, preventing them from ever truly feeling secure. And that leads us to our final section, Section 4, Synthesis, From Fear to Freedom. As we transition into the resolution today, our goal is to leave you with a clear, empowering philosophy, because recognizing the origin of your drive is only the very first step.
So the crucial point is this. When you look at two wildly successful people, they might look completely identical on paper, but one was safe to develop. Their growth was a natural, joyful exploration in a good family environment, kind of like a tree growing in fertile soil. The other, the survivor, was forced to develop through the rocks. Their growth was mandatory for survival in a bad family environment. The outward excellence is identical, but the internal lived experience, the way they feel when they wake up in the morning, the way they handle a mistake, is entirely, fundamentally different.
And this brings us to a cautionary, but ultimately hopeful truth. True achievement without subsequent self-healing will inevitably impact your long-term happiness. Simply recognizing your success, just looking at your trophies or your bank account, it isn't enough. If your achievements were built on a foundation of trauma and fear, you have to do the work. The survival skills that got you out of the burning building are not the same skills you need to decorate your new home. Active psychological repair is required to learn how to actually live in peacetime.
I want to leave you with this final, vital question to consider. How can we retain our discipline, that incredible, hard-won resilience that makes you so capable, while finally shifting the core engine of our motivation from fear-driven to autonomously chosen? The war is over. You survived. Now the real, beautiful challenge begins, taking true, joyous ownership of the future you fought so incredibly hard to secure. Thanks for joining us for this explainer, and we'll see you next time.